So it looks like next year will be the year that we're going to be getting a plethora of M2 powered Mac machines, whether that is desktop machines, MacBook Pros, and everything in between. And obviously they're going to be more powerful than the M1 series ones, but these things are going to kind of blow us away, maybe even more than when we went from Intel to M1. Let's talk about what we found out. So this year was the first time Apple introduced the M2 chip in their laptops, and they also added it into their iPad Pro. iPad Pro didn't need it, but the M2 MacBook Air was a wonderful upgrade. Yes, hardware-wise was more of the difference from a form aspect, right? We got a new design, we got a new notch, a larger screen, a nicer keyboard, Touch ID was revamped, new 1080p webcam, but we got the M2, the baseline M2 chip, and that is the first iteration of Apple's second generation M processor. And we did get some improvements. We got about a 15% improvement on CPU and about a 30 to 40% improvement on GPU, which Apple's very proud of. And again, these machines run silently, especially the MacBook Air one, and the MacBook Air with 16 gigs of RAM, the M2 chip, literally everything I throw at it, it's able to handle. But now there's a data company by the name of Steam that every month they publish, which basically runs a data scrape showing what kind of computer hardware and software gamers are using. So this is a great indication to show us exactly what is out there, right? What GPUs are out there, what CPUs are out there, what operating systems are being used, what hardware is being used, to see exactly what type of products are out in the wild right now. So at first glance, this information doesn't really matter to a lot of people, but we did notice that there were model identifiers as Mac 14,6 and Mac 15,4. And then the use of these Macs are listed at 0.00%, meaning there's probably 10, maybe 20, 25 of these computers out there being used and tested by Apple engineers. Because again, on that list, we probably see like the M2 MacBook Air being utilized 2% of the time, or we see some sort of Windows gaming computer being used 20% of the time. So this being an identifier for 15,4 and a 14,6 means we're getting new laptops that are being very sparingly used, probably just by testers on Apple campus. So the 14.6 variant has been spotted a few times in the Geekbench testing results, so the results are believed to represent the M2 Max chip, right? So we're probably gonna get an M2 Pro, M2 Max, and then finally an M2 Ultra with some sort of Mac Studio or Mac Pro, or maybe an M2 like Lightspeed version, hopefully Apple does call it that. That'd be a very cool name for a Mac Pro, the M2 Mac Pro Lightspeed or something like that. I think that would be kind of cool. But the multi-core results are kind of crazy. We're kind of nearing, just with the M2 Max, we're nearing almost 15,000 in a Geekbench score. Yes, that is just a spec, that is just a number, but obviously those numbers have some real world translations and we'll be able to test that once we get those in. And then we have a single core on that M2 Max chip of about 2027. So again, these computers are going to be very powerful. They're going to be able to handle pretty much anything that you can handle. And I'm curious to know, leave a comment down below. Who do you think, and what profession or what use cases are there where people are really pushing already the M1 Max and M1 Ultra to its limits? I know that I'm not one of those people, but so I'm very curious to know what type of situations you need to be in that top 0.1% maxing these out, where you absolutely need an M2 Max or an M2 Ultra. So we do believe that the 14.6 variants of these identifiers are referring to MacBook Pros, and that the 15.4 variant is referring to some sort of desktop solution, whether it is a Mac Studio, a Mac Mini, or maybe even that touted Mac Pro, which Apple is yet to transition over into their M lineup. So Apple is rumored to be planning to introduce multiple new Macs in 2023. This includes the new 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pros, which probably will be M2 Pro and M2 Max variants. Also a new Mac Studio, which should bring an M2 Ultra. And then finally a long-awaited Apple Silicon-powered Mac Pro, where I know a lot of people spent, $20, $30, $40,000 on these Macs. And maybe that's why Apple is kind of not putting out an M version of it, because they're like, hey, let's give these people 2, 3, 4 years of use with those $50,000 computers, and then release another one so people don't feel like they got ripped off. Because I think that's probably Apple's marketing ploy right now, because they can easily throw in an M-powered chip with all that airspace, with all that chassis, with all that cooling, and they can make something extremely powerful. And then lastly, we are hoping to get another $699 or $749 version of the Mac Mini powered by an M2 chip, maybe even an M2 Pro. You never know, because the Mac Mini, in my opinion, maybe next to the MacBook Air and the Mac Mini are easy no-brainers for anybody looking to get a Mac for the first time, anybody that needs just a regular computer that's gonna last them 5 to 10 years. Jump on one of those. And I'll link some down below because there are some great deals on Amazon right now. But again, lastly, when it comes to the M2 Max chip, it's most likely to power the high-end versions of the new MacBook Pro and the entry-level Mac Studio model. And then the baseline model of the MacBook Pro is likely to be powered by the M2 Pro chip, very similar to last year with the M1 Pro and the M1 Max. But for comparison, the increase in power from the M1 to the M2 iPad Pro is only about 10-11%, but we should see much bigger jumps from an M1 Max to an M2 Max. But I just want to bring you guys that news because obviously we're going to be getting new MacBooks next year because it's part of that life cycle, but I think these chips are going to be a little bit more powerful than what we think or what we thought they were going to be overall, with those Geekbench scores showing some promising results. So be on the lookout, probably Q1, early Q2 for new MacBooks or new Mac Studios or just new Mac computers, Mac OS machines to be released with their new M2 counterparts, because again, right now we have the M2 MacBook Air and the M2 MacBook Pro. We will be getting an M2 Pro, M2 Max, M2 Ultra, and who knows, maybe Apple might surprise us with the M2 Lightspeed. But that's gonna do it, everybody. If you guys wanna watch some more iPadOS, iOS, or macOS videos, click on one of these right here. But until next time, I'm Fernando. I'm out of here. Peace.